that thing?
Nah, this side here works pretty well.
Good afternoon.
Some of that is personality. You can start.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. There we go. Okay, good afternoon. As we begin this afternoon, I would like to introduce our speaker for our keynote address. Dr. Susan Renoe is Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research, Extension, and Engagement at the University of Missouri, a joint position between the Office of Research and the Office of Extension and Engagement. In her role, Susan works to strengthen the university's impact on the state of Missouri. She is also Executive Director of the National Science Foundation-funded NSF Center for Advancing Research Impact on Society and Principal Investigator for the NSF-funded National Alliance for Broader Impacts. Previously, Susan served as Executive Director of the Connector, formerly the Broader Impacts Network, for 6 years. She serves on several advisory boards, including the AAAS Leshner Leadership Institute for Public Engagement Fellows Program, the Network for Advancing and Evaluating the Societal Impacts of Science, Knowledge Translation Australia, the Missouri Science and Technology Policy Fellows Program, and the University of Missouri Museum of Anthropology. She also served as a jury member for the 2017 Swedish Impact Award and is a member of the Center for Advancing Informal Science Education's Research and Practice Task Force. She received her MA and PhD in Education from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and her BA and MA in Anthropology from the University of Missouri. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Susan Renoe.
Hello, Hello, everyone. I'm Susan. I'm very thankful that I am not standing between you and lunch. But this is like the third time I've had to give a presentation right after lunch or dinner was over. And everyone's like, so I will try to be engaging and innovative. First of all, I'm not on the stage because that's boring. So if you get tired, I'd like to get a question, ask you something. So we'll try to be innovative. First of all, I have to tell you something. So last night I picked up the program and I started looking at all the really interesting things that are happening. And I thought, well, how can I come to this conference sooner? These are awesome. A couple ones that were my favorite. One, working with drones. I love the idea of the graphic novels. So cool. YouTube, I love anything in technology, but my favorite is the chocolate rendezvous. You're going to learn a whole lot about me through this presentation. Things I like, things I'm interested in. You might find out that I'm a little bit crazy. How many of you have seen the movie Frozen? How many of you wish you never saw the movie Frozen? So there's a scene in the beginning of the movie, right? Where Anna and the prince are talking and he says, or she says, can I say something crazy? And what does he say? I love crazy. I try to put that on the bottom of my email, but in my signature line, and nobody lets me do that. So you're going to learn a lot about me in the next few minutes. So the road ahead. I'm going to give you some context, which is fancy administrator speak for history. If you listen to my introduction, I'm an anthropologist by training, I'm a historian by love. So anytime I talk, we got to talk about history. So I even have a t-shirt that says I heart history. That's how much I like it. I come from Missouri, which is a show me state. So we're going to take all this national and international context that I give you. We're going to put it down to what's happening at the University of Missouri. And then at the end, we're going to put it all together. And we're going to talk about some things that I think where you can fit into this national context. Is that fair? Yep. All right. This is where you're going to learn a whole lot about me super fast. This is who? Abraham Lincoln. What did he do in 1862? Signed the Moral Act, right? I love this already. This is great. Moral Act did what? Create land-grant universities, right? How awesome is that? 1914, what happened? Smith-Lieber, what did it create? And what's the point of it? To take everything we're learning at the universities, particularly in agriculture, take it out to communities, make a difference in the lives of people, listen to what people need in our communities, come back and do research about it, right? It's a great idea. We should do it more often, right? So let's talk about it. All right, 1966, what happened? Star Trek came out. It has nothing to do with my presentation, but I just like it. Yeah, I told you all the fun was up to me. Worrying about me. 1977, what happened? Star Wars came out, right? Again, very pivotal things in my life. 1981, what happened? Indiana Jones came out. It ties back in because why did I want to become an archaeologist? Indiana Jones. Do I have his Lego on my desk? And Han Solo on my desk too, yes. Harrison Ford, I think, is the time factor in that. Now back to some real stuff. So a lot of really good things happened between 1914 and 1977 and 1991, including the funding of the National Science Foundation, which I will affectionately refer to as NSF. We're going to talk a lot about that today. But in 1977, and if you know anything about the history of the National Science Foundation, at one point they had something like 100 criteria for judging research proposals. Since its founding in the early 50s, they've always had more great proposals than they could fund. They had to figure out how they were going to choose, and so they had 12 criterion. They had 4 criterion, and in 1997 they went down to 2. The intellectual merit and the broader impact. The intellectual merit is the quality of the science, the quality of the research. Is it going to change the world based on the research that's being done? Guess what? Researchers and administrators understand that one. They totally get it and they love it. Broader impacts is what is the benefit to society of the work that we're doing. Some of our researchers totally get that. Some of them have a hard time with that. 2010, Congress passed the America Competes Reauthorization Act. You're shaking your head. What does it do? Do you know? That's okay. I'm good with that. It does a lot of things. But one of the big things it does is it refunds most of the federal funding agencies, including the National Science Foundation. So every couple of years, they have to refund it. And in it, in section 526, it says something really important. How many people think you could quote chapter and verse of congressional legislation? Not me, but this one is really important. Because in 2010, in section 526, it says the National Science Foundation will have a broader impacts criteria. So guess what? Congress says we have to have it. From 1997 to 2010, most researchers gave it a checkbox. Most of them gave it a slight nod. Most people hoped it would just go away. No one wanted to do the societal impact stuff. Guess what Congress said? You have to do it. That same year, the National Science Board, which is the advisory board for NSF, did a review of the criteria, and like I said before, they figured out that researchers and administrators understand intellectual merit. They get the idea of research. Broader impacts is not the thing that they get, and National Science Board said 2 things. One, we have to keep it because Congress says we have to keep it, so you got to do it. And then the second thing they said was universities should provide support for researchers to be able to do this work and do it really well. So in 2012, first I should say in 2011, Iowa State, not too far from here, had started the first Broader Impacts Office that was centrally funded. It was funded by the National Science Foundation. In 2012, MU started the Broader Impacts Network. And our job was to support researchers who were trying to figure out this broader impacts thing. We provided trainings for researchers on what it was and how to do it. We worked on proposals. We helped them write the broader impact section. We did all of that. We weren't the only university who was doing this work. We didn't know it at the time. I didn't even know that Iowa State had an office until 2013. All of a sudden, a group of us got together and said, hey, I'm doing this work, you're doing this work, what if we got together and talked about that? And so in 2014, the National Science Foundation gave us about $500,000 to start a national network of people like me who were trying to figure out how do we help researchers do broader impacts. 2017 came. A couple things happened. American Innovation and Competitiveness Act. Do you know that one? AICA is the next version of ACRA. So it refunds the National Science Foundation, and once again people were hoping broader impacts would go away. It did not. In fact, Congress said, this is the gold standard. Of course we're keeping it. In fact, I think it says gold standard in the language. I don't know that one as well. The other thing that happened is on our campus, something crazy happened. I told you I love crazy. Someone, namely my boss, Mark McIntosh, who is the Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development, pulled me into a room with the Vice Chancellor for Extension and Engagement, Marshall Stewart, and they said, hey, don't you want another job? And Susan said, why not? I could take another job. I'm running a national network. I already have a full-time job. Sure, we can do this thing. So now I have two reports. I report to both the Office of Extension and Engagement and the Office of Research. Oh, and we decided that the Broader Impacts Network as a name was too restrictive, too prescriptive. People think about broader impacts and they think about NSF. They don't think about NASA, they don't think about the Department of Education, they don't think about NIH. So researchers aren't coming to us to work on bigger engagement problems because they don't know that's what we do. So we said, what do? We changed our name. We have a new boss, we have a new mission, maybe a little more money, just a little, and we're going to change our name. So the Broader Impacts Network became the connector. And that's important because in 2018, two things happened. That's my avatar. The graphic designer who created it for me tells me I have to use it all the time or he gets mad. And it's so much better because I try not to send my picture anywhere. Why not send a cartoon? So two really cool things happened last year. I became the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research, Extension, and Engagement, which is a fancy title to say I work for the Office of Research and the Extension and Engagement. And my job is to bring the resources and research of the University of Missouri out to communities, find out what their needs are, and bring it back to the university. What does that sound like? So I am a product of the University of Missouri. Around Columbia, we call that Mizzou-made. I came there in 1993, sorry, I got something in my throat, it can't be that long ago, to play basketball and to get my degree. I love the University of Missouri. So, and my train of thought went away. I forget what it was. It'll come back, don't worry. So, I love the University of Missouri. I became the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research. Oh, that was it. So, I've been there for a long time. I had no idea what extension was. I grew up in Illinois. My family had farms outside of Peoria. I had no idea what extension was and what it did. I didn't have any idea what it was until about 5 years ago. And all of a sudden, I found out about extension, and you know what I said? You're the original Broader Impacts. You've been doing this work for over 100 years. How come we've separated what goes on in extension and what goes on campus? So my job is to bring that back together. So besides the fact that I have this new title and a new job, NSF said, you're doing a really good job building a network, but we really want to take this broader impacts thing to the next level. And we said, that's awesome, but we want to talk about not just broader impacts in terms of NSF, and not just about STEM education. We want to talk about research impact and what's happening across our institution. So we want to talk about social sciences, arts, and humanities. We want to talk about STEM, we want to talk about STEAM, STEAM meaning arts, STEAM meaning ag. We want to talk about all research and how it impacts the lives of people. And so we didn't call it the National Center for Broader Impacts, we call it the Center for Advancing Research Impact in Society. All right, so that brings us to 2018. You want to know what happened in 2019? The Avengers came, all right? And I have to tell you this quick story. So my son's 14th birthday was April 14th, and Avengers came out 2 weeks later. I literally had to get on a plane at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning after Avengers came out to fly to our national conference in Arizona. But he wanted to see the movie for his birthday with his friends, right? So what do we have to do? We have to go to a 3-hour movie at 7:30 on Friday night because we can't go on Thursday night because he has to go to school. And I got to take a bunch of boys because heaven forbid we should wait like 2 weeks to see it because everyone will have seen it by then, right? So again, it has nothing to do with my presentation, but we like to have it. And actually, we'll come back to see it in a minute, at the end of my presentation. Okay, so that's a little context. There are a lot of people in the world who are trying to figure out how we do this thing, connecting research and communities. 2 real big reasons for that. One is that people don't see the value of higher education. When I come to somebody's community and I tell them that the University of Missouri is an AAU institution and a Research 1 institution, you know what happens? You want to show me? Your eyes glaze over, right? What they care about is how are you helping their economy? How are you making their health better? How are you educating their kids better, right? So in the Show Me State, people feel that way. So we're going to talk about 3 things related to what we're doing at the University of Missouri. First is the big idea. Second is how we built infrastructure to support the big idea. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some examples of engagement in action. This is Dr. Alex Cartwright. He is a very interesting person. He comes from the Bahamas. He immigrated from there to Iowa and went to school at the University of Iowa when he was, I think, in high school. One of the cool things about him is that he has his GED. He went from GED to PhD. He was working in a hog processing plant here in Iowa, cleaning hogs. He then went to work in a factory in the evening while he went to community college to get a degree in business. And he wanted to get a degree in business because that's all he knew. Someone told him, his manager said, why don't you think about engineering? You might be good at that. He took his first engineering class, ended up getting his PhD in engineering. He's gone on to do wonderful things. When he comes and talks to people about what life is like and how education can help you rise up and understand the needs of communities, people listen because he sounds a lot like them. But also because he has this really crazy idea that I love. And now I can't really even say University of Missouri anymore because what he says is we're not that. We're not the University of Missouri, we're the University for Missouri. And that seems like such a small thing, but when you talk about that, we don't just sit in the middle of Missouri in Columbia. We're here doing something for the people of Missouri. And if you look at what he said, it's really important. With a focus on all things Missouri, we will deepen the university's relationship with and value to the people of Missouri. From Neosho to Hannibal, the struggles facing Missouri communities are challenges that we are ready to tackle. And I don't know about you, but where I'm from, people in Missouri felt like the University of Missouri had left them behind a long time ago. And they didn't even recognize that the MU extension sign in their county had anything to do with the university sitting in Columbia. This is Marshall Stewart, one of my bosses, and he follows that up. This is the big idea. We are steadfast in our resolve to help Missouri meet the challenges facing the state and improve lives. And I love that because I love the University of Missouri. I bleed black and gold. Missouri is my adoptive home. My in-laws live on a century farm, which means it's been in their family for over 100 years. My kids and I, we all spend our weekends there. I want the lives of Missourians to be better. How many of you know that broadband is an issue? I drove through parts of central Iowa on my way here, and there was no cell service. And it reminded me of what it's like back in Missouri, right? We want to make people's lives better. So how do you do that? I can make a presentation. I can come to your hometown and bring the athletic department with me if I want to. I can say anything I want to, but at the end of the day, if I'm not actively working and intentionally putting in infrastructure to make that happen, at the end of the day, it's not going to happen. So a couple things that have happened. We believe in a balance of high tech and high touch. There are many things you can do through the internet, right? YouTube, video, online courses, all kinds of things. But not everybody has access to that, right? So we have a balance of high tech and high touch. In our old staffing model for extension, You might have an ag specialist who served anywhere from 7 to 10 counties. What we did was we divided the state into smaller groups, usually in groups of 3, that each have a nutrition and health specialist, a business and community development person, and a youth and families educator. But what's important about that is every one of the counties, all 114 and the city of St. Louis, have something special called a community engagement specialist. I love this job. The community engagement specialist job is to have their fingers on the pulse of everything that's happening in their communities. What do they need? What's going on? What's ongoing? What's emergent? And their job is to report that back to us. And we also hired here in our central office an engagement facilitator. Her job is to take all those requests, figure out who we filter that through, and make that happen. How many of you know that people sometimes see universities as really slow machines? Did I say that? Really slow. They're non-responsive. You put something in, it's like a black box. Something comes out, maybe doesn't come out. What we're trying to do is to be responsive to the needs of Missourians when they need us. So here's the connector. So I told you that my old office went from being the Water Impacts Network to being the connector. People really love the name of that, and I wish I could take credit for it. I am the worst when it comes to coming up with names, acronyms, some kind of fancy thing for your organization. I'm the worst. But I love this because we connect the people, resources, tools, and ideas of the UM system, research, and creative activities to local communities for the benefit of Missouri, the nation, and the world. What a cool job. People ask me every day, how can I get done the things that I do? Because I love my job. What job do you get to get up and make people's lives better every day? So let's talk a little about engagement in action. And yes, she is putting her hand inside of a cow. Just saying, how many of you done that? How many of you did that on your first try? Your first chance? How many of you took a couple times before you did it? It might have been 20 years between the first opportunity and the time that I actually did it. So this is one of my absolute favorite things. We have lots of great engagement activities that we do. This is one of my favorites. And somebody asked us to name our most favorite, and this one was the one for me. How do you like to go to the movies? I love going to the movies, as you can tell. I also heard this really great idea from a friend of mine in San Francisco. I was on Twitter, and I looked, and he and his friend were just going to meet at a local restaurant. They were going to show one of the Avengers movies, and then they were going to talk about the science in the movie when it was done. And I was like, that's genius. You just invite people to come to the movies, have a drink, have something to eat, and then talk about the research that happens inside of it. So we partnered about a year ago with a local movie house called Ragtag in Columbia, and we've shown movies every month since last August. And when we get to the end of my presentation, I'll show you the first one, and you'll go, that makes total sense. These are the ones we just had one on Tuesday night. Coming up in June, we have Inside Out, we're going to show League of Their Own, and we're going to show Labyrinth. We've shown Gravity, and we brought one of our local, one of the retired astronauts who live on our campus, and she talked about what it was like to live in space. How many of you know that the first thing she said was, nobody looks like Sandra Bullock in space? And for sure, no one looks like George Clooney in space, right? She talked about that. We showed Tootsie, and we talked about labor relations. We've showed Die Hard for Christmas, and we talked about physics and how you blow things up. Yes, it was super fun. It really was. We talked about physics. We talked about law enforcement. We talked about all kinds of things, and the community loves it. Why do you think our researchers love it?
They get to talk about what they love.
They get to talk about what they love, and is that hard? No. They come, they watch a movie, we give them free tickets. When they get done, a group of people who's having a good time ask them questions about their research. We are committed to bringing research and communities together. But it's not always easy for our researchers to do that. So if I'm going to tell them it's important, and I'm going to say it needs to be part of your job and it's part of what we do, I have to come up with ways to help facilitate that. So that's one of them. This is another one. And in the meeting we had, and they asked us what our favorite thing was. Most people picked Showing the Zoo Day. How many of your campuses have an open house? How many of you have done anything with it? Is it fun? Nope. Everyone from Missouri, cover your ears. I met with someone randomly at an event who grew up in Columbia, whose father was a professor. And he said, we spent every Sunday on campus. We played football, we had a picnic, it was like our backyard. And he said, I don't think I've been on campus in 30 years. And I thought, that's sad. And then I thought, how many people have never been on our campus, have no sense of what it's like, don't even understand what labs we have never even met anyone from the University of Missouri. And so, stupid Susan, who comes out sometimes, and smart Susan doesn't smack her and say, shh, don't do that, said, can we have a campus open house? And someone said, that sounds great, go do it. And smart Susan was like, within 6 months, we had 109 activities, from engineering to life sciences to plant sciences and ag science. We had tractor pulls, we had the hospital helicopter, we had HDFS events, we had people talking about taxes, we had anything you could imagine from our journalism school to engineering and 3D printing, all happening in a 4-hour window before our spring football game. Because how many of you know that spring football brings people to town? Right? It was outstanding. Everyone from campus said, I want to do it. This is fun. We brought about 3,000 people through campus on a Saturday. Those people had a blast. The vibe and energy on our campus, the goodwill that we felt. Someone said, are you guys like this nice all the time? And I said, yeah, we are. You know, we don't drive golf carts around on campus, but if we did, it'd be so much nicer. We'd feel it'd be a good vibe too. But it was great. It was so fun. People said, I can't wait. When are we doing it again next year? We want to do it. We want to bring people. The other thing to that, though, is that it's one thing to invite people to come to you. It's another thing for you to get in your car and drive 4 hours to somewhere in Missouri and go to them. So Show Me Mizzou Day was the beginning of several things. That was the coming in. Now we're doing something called Mizzou to You, where we go out. Any of you been to the Lucas Oil Raceway in Wheatland, Missouri? I like this guy. You need to come with me all the time. You know everything. How many of you?
St. Louis.
That's fine. Cardinal fan?
Of course.
Cub fan.
That's your problem.
We live in a split house. My son is about to go nuts while he's here. I love it. But how many of you know that Lucas Oil Raceway was hit by a tornado on Monday night? How many of you know that 30 minutes from my house last night was hit by a tornado? And we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But we're going to Lucas Oil Speedway, and we're doing something called Mizzou to You, which is like a little mini Mizzou fair. We're going to bring our legal clinics, so our veterans clinic will be there providing free services for veterans. Our nursing students will be there giving free health screenings. I've been told we're having something called a smoothie bike. Who knows about that? I can't wait to see how that's going to work. That sounds like fun. Apparently there's a blender attached to a bicycle. Love that. We're going to have our beekeepers and our master gardeners. We're going to have our eco car. So what better thing to have at a raceway than a solar car? We're going to have 3D printing. We're having something called brush bots that you make robots out of toothbrushes. Can't wait for that too. She says that looks like fun. We're going to do that. All of that to show the people of Cleveland, Missouri, and that region of the state who never gets anyone from Mizzou to come down besides our extension folks, that we care about them, we have resources, and we're willing to come to them. So we're really excited about that. And that will be the first of what we do in every region around the state. So by the end of the next 18 months, every part of the state will have had a visit from our campus bringing resources to them. How many of you know that flooding is a thing? And in northwest and northeast Missouri, where I'm from, that's a big deal. Coming up through Iowa, same thing. We went for a walk down by City Hall and went to BC, floodgates closed, sandbags up by the river. It's a real thing, and where we are, it's devastating. one of our research farms is completely underwater and will completely be underwater for a long, long time. And we're just a research farm. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to be available and active when things like this happen. I mentioned that there was a tornado. Within 12 hours, people from the University of Missouri were, it's only 30 minutes this time, not 4 hours, but we're down. Our police department was there. People are trying to respond, seeing what we can do to help the universities that are there, who were impacted by the tornado, to help the people that were there and help with law enforcement. We want to be seen as not just there when it's fun to go to the racetrack and have a good time, but when people need us. And not just for the first 5 minutes when the cameras are rolling, but 5 months from now when people still don't have a place to live and they have problems and they need help. So, a little bit about us. So let's talk about what all this means for you. First of all, I feel like I don't need to tell you what this means for you, because when I look at what you're already doing, everything you do is public engagement. Everything you're doing is broader impacts, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking about this and I was on the AAAE website and I thought, this is outstanding. This is exactly what we do. The mission of AAAE is to foster excellence in discovery and the exchange of evidence-based solutions for social science challenges and agriculture-related sciences. You could easily pull out just about any of that and it would fit the bill for the National Alliance for Broader Impacts. It would fit what we're trying to do at the University of Missouri. We want to provide trusted, evidence-based solutions for the problems of Americans, right? And I love the principles up there. Inclusivity, collaboration, professionalism, impact, and innovation. That's what we have to have in public engagement. That was our first extra credit. You can see who picked it. I wanted to talk about cars that drive themselves, right? So our first extra credit show was Black Panther. I think it's the only time a Marvel movie's been shown at our local indie playhouse. We had someone talking about the physics of superheroes. Do you know that you can actually stop a train with web fluid? That spider web is so strong they can actually do that? We have engineers who study that stuff. I love that. We know about that. We had someone who talked about the costuming in the films. We brought theater in, and she won the Academy Award. Did you know that they 3D printed some of the costumes in that film? How cool is that? And then we had someone from architectural studies who talked about virtual reality environments. If you know from that film, one of the things that they do is they drive airplanes and cars from inside of a lab. And it didn't even occur to me, he says, we drive drones all the time. You don't have to be in a car to do that. I thought that was so far advanced. I didn't even realize that when you look at T'Challa's suit, that when they shoot bullets at him, it sucks in the energy and he shoots it back out. There are materials in the world right now that do that. How cool is that? Sorry, I got a little geeked out for just a minute. So let's go back. I told you Avengers would come back to being something to do with engagement. It always ties in. So some pathways to broader impacts that I think you guys do extremely well and ways to tie into some of this work that's happening. You guys train teachers extremely well, and you have access to the brains of tomorrow. Teacher training and improved education is one of the hallmarks of broader impacts work. So it would be so easy for you to plug into NSF grants, to plug into NIH grants, if you're not already doing that, to plug into all different kinds of grants doing the work that you already do. One of the problems is trying to figure out how to put those things together. I can tell you from experience that a lot of our life scientists don't have any sense how to reach out to their colleagues across campus who could help them. This week I sat in a room with two people from our campus who will remain nameless because there's some people here who know them, who both work in ag and big data. One of them came from the engineering and big data side and said, hey, in our big data lab we're talking about doing something with agriculture. And a person in ag said, hey, here in agriculture we're thinking about doing something in big data, and they didn't even know each other. I told him, I said, I think if I can take a picture of this moment, because this is going to be the thing that's going to launch 1,000 ships, right? I think that happens on more campuses than just mine. So one of the things I'm going to say is that you're going to have to help your colleagues find you and understand how you can help them. Because many of them are open to partnering, they just don't know how to take that step. That's why my office is called the Connector. When it first started, I thought I would spend most of my days working on proposals. I spent most of my time building partnerships, building relationships with community partners so that when researchers need someone, we can bring them together. So teacher training is one of the ways to plug in to broader impacts. Assessment. I told Anna I wouldn't talk about her, but I am. Anna Ball, who's sitting up here from our campus, was a faculty fellow in the Broader Impacts Network for assessment. One of the things that comes out of the language in the congressional legislation and also in the grant proposal guide for NSF is that we're supposed to be assessing and evaluating all of the broader impacts work we do. Any kind of outreach and engagement. How many of you know that researchers do not know assessment? I know enough to be dangerous, and that's a bad thing, right? The average NSF budget is about $100,000 a year. And on our campus, the indirect rate is just over 50%. So let's do some simple math. $100,000. We take out the indirect rate for that. Then somebody wants to have a graduate student, which is about half of that money, about $25,000. Then they want to take some money out to do research. Then they're going to pay themselves a little summer salary. And then Susan's going to say you need to pay your partner for the engagement part of your work. And then when there's no money left, and if I didn't have this in my hand right now, my hands would be squeezing together like this, Susan says you also have to pay to do assessment of that work to see if it worked, right? Their eyes get glassed over, they start to freak out because they don't know an evaluator, and they don't know where that money's going to come from. You all know assessment. There's my friend Becky Mott. You see, I know the evaluators in the room. I'm just saying. We have to know them. So if you understand assessment and evaluation, your partners need you. The researchers need you bad. And people like me who provide connections between researchers and resources need you because we have to know who you are. This is a place where you can plug into engagement all day long. Program development. Like I said before, the things I saw highlighted in this book are the kind of outreach activities that our researchers would love to do. They don't have any expertise in that. Many of our folks should not be on YouTube. They probably shouldn't even talk to people. I mean, I would say it to their face. It's okay. They want to do good. They don't know how. You have innovative practices. You have the skills and the evidence base to do what is right. And you know how to do this. Again, they're looking for you to help them, even if they don't know it. The other thing is someone talked about impacts, and I thought it was really interesting. I love these, and I'm going to steal them for our next conference. We're going to have those up on the wall, too. I love that someone said, how do we get outside of our comfort zone? We should be publishing in other journals. Absolutely. You have skills and knowledge that the rest of us need and could use. Anything you can do to take your work out of where you're normally publishing and putting it into journals where researchers can see them, that will have huge impact. I'm on this task force. You heard me talk about this. It's a Research to Practice Task Force. And the reason I'm on it is because researchers ask me all the time, what's the best practice? I'll do whatever you tell me. I just want you to show me the literature so I know what to do. We don't have that literature. You do. You have that evidence. So publishing it in places where they can see it, making it available is another thing that you can do. And then the last thing again is funding opportunities. Broader impacts in name is NSF only. But broader impacts in spirit is every federal funder, but not just federal funders, private funders. People want to improve STEM education. People want to improve teacher training. People want to broaden participation, which I saw in that book. And one of the things for you to think about is that Federal agencies, each one has a different understanding of what counts as underrepresented. The National Science Foundation has the broadest list of what counts as underrepresented. Women, persons with disabilities, underrepresented minority groups, veterans, first-generation college, people who qualify for socioeconomic status, rural folks. They even fund things for people who are incarcerated. We have a great program in 4-H here in Missouri called 4-H Life. Love that program. Creating 4-H clubs for the families of people who are incarcerated. Giving them something to do when they come to visit them. It's awesome. You can be as creative as you want, looking for different sources of funding. And you don't have to partner with another researcher to go after these funds. You can, but you don't have to. Last thing, shameless plug for the Center for Advancing Research Impact in Society. We just had our meeting 2 weeks ago in Tucson. Next year we're going to be in Durham. We would love to have you here. If you're interested in finding out more about public engagement, more about this broader impacts thing, if you want to present this great work that you're doing in a space that will get you different type of exposure, we love to have you there. It's fun. We have a good time. You won't be surprised, but R2-D2 came. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your remarks. I think I learned a lot.
Can we get them to use the mic? We can't hear back here.
Thank you for your remarks.
There's no microphone.
Thank you. My question is, I think what you're doing for Susan. Thank you. Third time.
No.
No? Okay. Thank you. My question is, what you're doing for universities, I think the federal government needs to do for itself. Has anyone ever thought about trying to do what you guys are doing for research and doing it for the services that the federal government provides? So I think a lot of people don't realize, what government, either state or local or the feds do.
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. I would say yes and no in terms of one of the things that we try to do, and I know that you probably do this in your jobs every day, is try to take what we're doing at the university and plug that into the people who are actually doing it. So a lot of it is workforce development. But like, for instance, the work we do in social work, a lot of our research there gets translated into people who are actually making policy and who are doing that and implementing it. So I think trying to bridge the gap between research and practitioners is a huge thing. I think that's a way to do that. Honestly, we haven't thought about it, but I'm going to take that back to them and I'm going to think about that. Thank you for that.
If you notice, recruitment dividends paying off from your work with the connector?
Absolutely. So I don't know how much you know about the University of Missouri, but about 4 years ago we had a lot of chaos on our campus and a lot of things that we had student protests and some other things that ended up with our chancellor and our system president resigning. So as a result of that, we had a drop in enrollment. We got funds cut from the state government. People really were not really excited about the University of Missouri in many different sectors of the state. One of the things that has happened in the last 2 years is we've been fully funded by the state, which never happens in the state budget. Our enrollment is back up. We talked to the legislators in Jefferson City, and what they say is, we hear from our constituents that MU is in their community making lives better. And it's because of the work that Extension does. It's because of our renewed emphasis on engagement. It's because of our administration's commitment to the people of Missouri. It's paid off huge dividends for us. Yes?
So you had mentioned when your hands were about with no money left that they need us, and this is where they start thinking about assessment. And at that point, there's no more money for us to be involved on a project. So how would you recommend us leveraging ourselves to get involved in that process earlier on when there are other researchers that do need our help and assistance and expertise, but they think about it or are prompted to think about it when there is no more budget left to spend on hiring someone to help with that part?
That's a good question, and it's a real reality, right? I'd love to say that all researchers at the University of Missouri involved the connector early enough in writing their broader impacts part and finding their partners. I'd love to say that they turn all their proposals in early, that they think about assessment at the beginning rather than the end. They don't. There's always going to be people that don't do that. But one of the things that we've really tried to do is really fix that. You know, we talked about infrastructure on the research side. We're trying to get people to do mock panels, and that you have to have your project done about 2 months before it's due to OSPA, so you have time to revise and do things. People who work with us, we bring in the evaluator from the beginning. So what we're slowly doing is trying to change the culture, right? The other thing, and this is what I tell anybody who wants to partner with a researcher, figure out what your offer is. What do you have that they need, and what will it cost to do it? So if you know that you can be an evaluator on a project, and that's something you want to do, find out the people like me who are supporting them on campus and let us know. I mean, that's how we found out about Anna, we found out about Becky and other people who do this work, because we went out and found them, or they came and talked to us, so let them know that you're available. But also they're gonna ask you, how much does it cost? What are you gonna do for me? Have sort of a menu in your mind of what it is you'll do, how much that will cost, and then be willing to walk away too. We did a presentation at the University of Kansas earlier this semester, and one of the partners said, they always come to us at the last minute, they never have money, and I looked at him and I said, you don't have to say yes. You can say no, and that never even occurred to him. He always thought he had to do it. You don't have to. And we tell people, you need to treat people just like you want them to treat you. Treat them as professionals, their time is valuable, and if you want them to do work for you, include that in the budget. Well, thank you for your time today. Columbia, come find me, and you're always welcome to come to Extra Credit anytime. And now back to Dr. Torres.